Welcome back to my Life is Strange analysis. We're going to analyze every second of Chapter 5 and learn all that we can. We're going to start with the Dexter sequence. This is the worst sequence in the game. Oh, it's well written. It's got good dialogue, good acting, good camera work, good scenes, good pacing. But it doesn't fit. Now, obviously this is, if I had written the game, it would be different. And that's true of everyone. No matter who wrote the game, it would be different. And we're trying to learn from the game that does exist, rather than some fantastical mirage that we create out of whole cloth. But I do have to address the glaring story problems that this creates. And let's talk about that for a couple of seconds here. This is a story about how far Max is willing to go to be with Chloe. She's willing to destroy the city to be with Chloe. She's willing to go right up to the edge of destroying the universe to be with Chloe. But once you introduce a serial killer into the equation, that's not the question anymore. It's not, how far will I go to be with Chloe? It's, how can I survive? How can I get out of this? A serial killer is a blunt force narrative weapon, like a car chase or getting lit on fire. Your personal weaknesses and motives don't matter because you're just trying to survive. And yes, you can use that. You can make a very good movie. An action movie has plenty of these scenes and they're still very powerful. But it sweeps aside all of your personal concerns and your personal fears. They're all replaced by the fact that you need to survive. That's, you know, whether or not you're nervous in public is definitely a secondary concern, and it sweeps all those things onto the floor. The problem is that the rest of the chapter is about those things. This sequence is why everyone hates the nightmare sequence. It's because the nightmare sequence is entirely about Max learning to deal with her fears and weaknesses, whereas this sequence is entirely about, okay, those don't matter. Period. You're busy now. You do not have time for that shit. So it's a derailing, and it doesn't work out. The worst part is that we would have been able to use Mr. Jefferson in a lot of different and very powerful roles if he hadn't been a serial killer. Putting aside the massive plot holes in this sequence, the whole idea that Jefferson has to be a serial killer is nonsense. And we'll talk about that in much greater detail as the scene unfolds. We have, unfortunately, quite a bit of time ahead of us.
I hate looking at myself like that. You'll pay for this, Jefferson. I promised I would never go back in time like this again.
You never made that promise.
But this is the only way.
Oh, that's great. Oh, Max.
This angle highlights your purity, see?
So I'm pretty sure that the author was a big fan of Dexter, and I'm also pretty sure that the reason that this game falls apart is because of his obsession with cliffhangers. Every cliffhanger he drops is a louder, flatter bang that ends up breaking the story more and more. If this had gone on for 6 chapters, I'm sure that the last cliffhanger would have been, I don't know, Chloe turning into Godzilla. So you don't need that level of cliffhanger, even if you're doing an episodic story. Do not allow your cliffhangers to destroy your story, especially since you're going to have to spend the first chunk of your next episode working with the fallout of that. And it's going to be really, really hard to pace that properly, as we see here. It's also going to be really, really hard to stay on theme, as we see here. Anyway, now we find out that Jefferson likes us not because we are a talented photographer, but because we look like a kid.
Not like Rachel, who was always looking in the wrong place.
See, that's something that didn't need a serial killer. This would have worked just as well if Jefferson was our mentor and we got close to him and it turned out that he just wanted to bang us. That would have been the exact same direction. Obviously, you're probably not going to drop this far into dark fantasies when it's just that kind of situation, but you can still get a massive amount of sadness and pain and anger out of that kind of betrayal. It doesn't require you to have a serial killer and derail everything. If we were angry at Mr. Jefferson for personal reasons, then we would be able to see how Max's personality deals with that. And that would have made the nightmare sequence make more sense. For example, if we'd spent the first part of this episode, instead of fighting against him in this kind of weird-ass situation, instead unifying the school against him using our time travel powers and lies and fabrications, that would have led us into the nightmare sequence just perfectly fine, smooth as silk. We wouldn't have any problems at all because our personal foibles would have been center screen.
Not private detecting with your little friend.
Obviously, we did have to kill Chloe in this story. No matter who wrote the story, Chloe's death would have to be a major event. The idea that Chloe would never die would be a very unusual take. But it's still hard to believe that it's actually real because it happened just in the last second as a cliffhanger for no reason. And it still doesn't feel real. It'll be quite a while before it feels real. And we're going to talk about that some more too. So much to talk about and so much to learn.
This looks good.
And this is like my fourth take.
More close-ups. Max, please do not move so much. I need you posed and framed my way. Maybe a new dose will calm you down.
So here's another flaw. The idea is that if we travel through time, we keep our inventory. And I thought that that was why we didn't rewind time when Chloe was shot. Because the drug is basically in our inventory. It's in our blood, and rewinding time won't change that. Unfortunately, it becomes clear right now that that's not the case. And the drug doesn't go with us for some reason, so we should have just rewound time. Well, whatever. This whole sequence is all about spilling that one vial on those photos. And if this is your first time through the sequence, it may have taken you quite a while to figure that out. The only thing that we've done with this sequence is spill some crap on a folder. And in exchange, we're getting treated to this as nightmarish as the author could make it scene of girls getting abused. Yay, that fits into our theme so well. I know you like Dexter, but do not put it into your game just for kicks at the last second.
Oh, Jesus.
So anyway, even though we were just drugged, when we time traveled back out of the photo, we're not drugged anymore. That's a shame, because it means that we could have saved Chloe by just rewinding time. Well, whatever. Anyway, the idea here is that you talk to Victoria, but in this scene, the voice actress cannot make Victoria sound like Victoria, and she just sounds like Kate, so we're not going to bother. That's not what I want to look at.
Jefferson couldn't handle stains on
There we
his...
are.
Whoa. I'm definitely
Just going to try and push through at a brisk pace.
I could try this one. This might work. Please work.
So wise, yet so innocent.
I'm not sure why he's using a red light.
I'm getting some.
I mean, it serves the mood,
images
but
here, Max.
it's not what I would normally light a subject with. But I will say that the background image where it's being cut apart by the plane of reality there is great. That really
You're
punches it
the
up.
winner, Max. I choose you. Your portrait.
Fuck you.
You're trying too hard. I know you're scared. You all have the same doe-eyed look when you wake up here. Replaced by fear as you realize what's about to happen.
Mr. Jefferson, why are you doing this?
Because he's badly written.
Max, I'm so glad you asked that question. Simply put,
Listen.
I'm obsessed with the idea of capturing that moment. Innocence evolves into corruption.
That is the theme of the story. Why is he a serial killer? He should just be talking about the theme of the story. The whole point is how far Max is willing to go to be with Chloe, what she's willing to destroy, and how she's willing to corrupt herself. Why is he a serial killer? He could literally just be there talking about it, and it would punch up the story. Ugh! Oh, it makes me angry as hell. Oh, jeez. Anyhow, that's why I hate this scene so much. He literally plays a core part of the theme. And instead of using him to punch up their theme, they use him to sweep aside their theme. What a misstep.
That shift from black to white to gray and beyond. Most models are cynical. They lose that naivete. However, some Blackwell students carry their hope and optimism with them like an aura. And those lucky few become my models. My subjects.
Yes. You're a psychopath. And this is your life.
That would have been so good, spread out over the course of the game. Him watching us be corrupted and noticing it, and maybe keeping a record of it in his book before his final betrayal to us. There's no need for him to be a serial killer.
Those faux punk sluts in my Seattle days.
I like those punks in Seattle. I've lived with a lot of them.
Go to hell.
They're pretty
you
fun
will for
people.
everybody you've hurt.
Unlike pure sweet Kate Marsh, I don't believe in that bullshit. She could have been my masterpiece. The world is what an artist makes it. And my muse...
Blah, blah, blah. God, I hate your voice now.
You might as well savor it, considering it's the last you'll hear. Oh. That struck a nerve. Your face changed color.
The voice acting is so good, and the dialogue is pretty solid too, so it's easy to buy into this sequence if you're playing it straight, and you're not just listening to a bitter guy rage about a misstep that he thinks someone made. But if you do have a different take on this, I'd love to hear it. I'm not married to my take on these matters. So here's another big plot hole. It turns out that Nathan is the one that killed Rachel, and Nathan is the one that drugged Kate Marsh. The victims of Jefferson have no names. They're never mentioned. He literally comes out of nowhere and has no connection to any of the things that we care about.
Don't be stupid, Max.
Here it comes.
Nathan thought he could be an artist like me. Instead, the dumbass gave her an overdose.
It was Nathan's fault. Nathan also was the one that did stuff to Kate. Jefferson has done nothing. He's just randomly a serial killer. It feels like a really late and desperate addition for no reason other than to create that last second cliffhanger that is so desperately needed.
Chloe and Rachel. You killed both
You're
of
not
them.
listening. He
They're
didn't.
fucking together in heaven right now.
Sorry, I'm just trying to talk over this stuff because I don't like it.
Okay. Now, let's see how these shots came out. I can see why your instant camera is so appealing. You don't need a computer to print your work out.
Presumably that's a digital camera, so he really doesn't either.
I have all those photos in my diary. This could be a way out.
Okay.
Wait! Please, Mr. Jefferson.
Max, I would love to talk shop, but I really need to go over these pictures. Especially while they're fresh in my mind. I think our session was a career high for me.
You still have my diary.
Don't worry. Nobody's going to read it. Thanks for reminding me. There's nothing more innocent than a teenager's diary. Oh. Look at your selfies. What a waste of talent. Look at that shot, Max. You can do so much.
Once again, this guy is great at dialogue. These multi-layered dialogues work really well. He's fantastic at middles and at slow transitions. He's just really crap at cliffhangers. Like crap enough to destroy the entire game.
Alone with a heart, I'm battered
You feel like totally haunted by the eyes of those sad.
And here we go, back to the beginning of the game, so that we can hear his dialogue again, this time knowing what we know.
Shh. I believe Max has taken what you kids call a selfie. A dumb
I'm
word
back.
for a wonderful photographic
right back where I started this insane week. And nobody is going to hurt Chloe ever.
Now, we've already said goodbye to all of these characters in this classroom. It's nice to see them again, but our focus is no longer on them. Now our focus is on moving forward. Max is going to take the reins of her own future, and her own past for that matter. And that's important, and it's valuable. And because we've said goodbye to those characters, we've cut them away, and we can focus with laser-like precision on what we need to focus on. It's very well done, aside from the fact that it didn't need to be about a serial killer, like, at all.
I'm not into capturing your interest. That's kind of sick, isn't it?
I guess somebody hasn't had their coffee. Do you want to try again?
Okay, the Daguerrean process. Blah, blah, blah.
Let's move on. Anyway, so the Daguerrean process made portraiture quite popular, mainly because it gave the subjects clear, defined features. You can learn more when you finish reading the assigned chapters. And guys, don't forget the deadline to submit a...
Now, they're lingering on this shot because they're going to use it again later on in the chapter, and it's fairly well done. You stretch the pacing out just a little bit long, so it's a little bit uncomfortable, and the player will remember that. They'll internalize the scene, and when you return to it later, they'll notice changes right away. They'll make sure that they'll immediately realize that there's something different or something important. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to take this opportunity to make a call to someone outside of the frame of this window, outside the frame of this photo, and set up a chain of events to change the future. Please note, we apparently can always have contacted people by phone while in a selfie. So we could have jumped back to a couple of days, a month before alternate timeline Chloe got into her accident and told her not to do that, and it would have worked because we're allowed to make phone calls. Instead, we swore we'd never jump into a photo again. Whatever. I'm harping on things that aren't really that critical just because these scenes don't make me happy. I can see all of the hard work that this author has put in getting swept aside by this new plot arc that just doesn't work.
So maybe I'll be going to San Francisco. And Jefferson, you'll be going to prison.
And this also doesn't work. The bloody nose is a red herring that never ends up being anything.
It doesn't matter what happens to me. I have to save Chloe.
Now, we are allowed to interact with a few of these characters, some central characters again, not to actually affect them in any way, but to show off how Max has decided that Max is in control. And she's no longer reacting, she's now acting. It goes on a little bit long with Victoria, but it is a fairly good way to show that Max is taking the reins. Only problem, it should have happened late chapter 3 or early chapter 4, not early chapter 5.
Okay, neither do I. Maybe we could both use a hug.
Because normally what happens after this is Max takes the reins, the main character of whatever story takes the reins, and they immediately get into huge trouble because they are in control and they drive off a cliff or whatever. In Max's case, she would take the reins and she'd immediately get in trouble because she breaks reality trying to pursue these goals. And that would have been Chapter 5, dealing with broken reality. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. So we don't have the option to not give Mr. Jefferson our photo. We have to give him our photo. Why we care about this photo is beyond me. It could be argued that Max is reaching out for everything at once. She's taken the reins, and so she wants it all. And that includes winning this contest. There's no indication of Max feeling like that, though. So she's just giving the photo for no particular reason.
Mr. Jefferson, we need to talk.
Can you see I'm talking to Mr. Jefferson now?
Yes, I see. But maybe you shouldn't. There's no
Let me know
reason
whether
for
you
you
thought
to be
this scene
so
went on too
insecure
long.
that you can't be happy with your own talent. Wouldn't it be better to lift people up than to bring them down? You could inspire people.
Okay, I don't know what you're talking about now. Do I, Mr. Jefferson?
I think I should stay out of this one, Victoria.
Then I guess I'm done talking.
And that's okay too.
Good voice acting, though. Now, this conversation is really good, and you should definitely pay attention to this multi-layered sequence. However, the last 3 lines should have just been cut.
Oh, that was easy.
No. It wasn't easy at all.
Well,
This is the first time we've had the advantage over Jefferson, and we're definitely taking it as far as we can.
That means a lot to me. And Blackwell. The first step for any artist is to put themselves out there in the world without fear. To be innocent.
Or guilty.
So this should have been the last line. The fact that it has several more lines after this is definitely a misstep, just from any pacing concern at all.
Only one of us will be going.
This line shouldn't have been there, or this one.
Anything can happen in a week.
As you're going to find out, Mr. Jefferson.
Either way, that's definitely enough for this episode. See you next time.